Welcome to the Filling the Gap Together podcast.
We are your hosts, Josh
and Krista. Recording now, so here we go. Welcome. I'm Krista with Filling the Gap Together podcast. And in the world of foster care, there's plenty of surprises, one of them being adoption. And today's special guest, Shari Collins, has experience with adoption. So welcome, Shari.
Well, thank you so much, Krista. It's great to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my experience with adoption is from the sibling perspective, not so much the parent perspective. I was about 5 years old when my parents adopted twin boys from Sierra Leone, Africa. They're about 6 months younger than I am. And so we all grew up together because, you don't remember much before you're 4 or 5 anyway. So
True.
So we all grew up together, ran into a lot of adventures. There was some normal sibling stuff. There was some crazy mental illness stuff and a lot of things in between. And one of the things that I saw a lot was my parents struggling to do it alone and not having the support that they needed, which meant that neither did we. And so I'm so grateful that you're filling that gap.
Oh, thank you. So going back to your parents
Mhm.
adopting, was that always something that your parents wanted to do? How did that all come about to even adopt from another country?
To hear them tell it, it's a call that God laid on their heart pretty early on while they were still dating before they even got married.
Wow.
And so they started praying it through, looking around, making sure they could afford all the adoption fees and this, that, and the other. And then they started the process, and it took about 2 years to finish, actually, because it was an
Wow.
international adoption, which is apparently a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
Having not tried to adopt myself just yet, you can speak to that one better than I can. But it
Yeah.
took about 2 years. So the boys were 4.5 before they actually joined our home.
Wow. Meaning that you were about 5 because you said there was
Mhm.
about a 6-month difference.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you had siblings also at the time, biological siblings?
I do. My biological sister was about 3 at the time. My biological brother, had not been born yet. He was born
Okay.
after the twins were adopted and joined our family. So it was one of those sibling dynamics where some of us were older, some of us were younger, and unlike in foster care, we met them for the first time after they were legally part of our family.
Yeah.
So that was a unique experience too.
Yeah, you can't go backwards on that.
No, indeed. No, indeed.
Well, so they came to your home and they were already adopted, and
Hmm.
everybody knew that it was a forever kind of a thing when you went in, you're
Yeah.
diving in head first, which I
Oh,
dive in
absolutely.
head first with almost everything that I do.
Mhm.
So tell us about
Yeah.
day one. What was day one like?
Most of what I remember, we were living in North Dakota at the time. My dad was active military, so we were stationed up there. And one of the first things I remember was watching them get out of the car and freaking out at the sight of snow because they were adopted from
Wow.
Western Africa. They had never
Okay.
seen snow before, you know? It's
Yeah.
just not a thing near the
Culture
equator.
shock. Yeah, for sure.
And so one of them was just terrified of the snow, and the other was eating it because he thought it was sugar. And I just remember thinking it was the funniest thing because these people had never seen snow before, and that was weird.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously, my parents had sat us down before they came, and I'm so grateful they took the time to explain to us that we're growing our family. We're choosing to love
Mhm.
more people. We don't love you any less. This is going to be different. This is going to be weird. We're going to figure it out together because this is something that God called us to do.
I love that.
I mean, as well as you can explain that to a 5 and 3-year-old, but I do
Yeah.
remember and appreciate that they took the time to do that and prepare us for more kids joining the home.
Yes. Yes. And how long do you think that it took those children to acclimate and additionally um, show that they had mental illness? Was that something that you were aware of ahead of time that they had mental illness, or you just saw come out in your home?
Yeah, we were not aware coming into it. We knew, obviously, that there had been a little bit of trauma that they went through. We knew there was a reason that they were in the orphanage and up for adoption. We knew that there had been some turmoil in their lives, but a lot of what we found out, we pieced together later from what they said. Our family didn't
Okay.
know in advance. And honestly, it was pretty hard to differentiate the culture shock from the mental illness symptoms because we weren't given any kind of support at all. My parents were not told what to look out for, how best to help the kids adjust. They weren't told anything like that. They
Wow.
just figured they'll show up, it'll probably be weird, and we'll get used to it. So some of their behaviors, we didn't know enough about their birth culture to know what was cultural for them and what was a symptom of their mental illness. One example is they did not treat my mom and I very well, and we weren't sure if that was mental illness, the reactive attachment disorder,
Mm,
just rebelling against authority, or if that was they came from a culture in Western Africa where women are viewed poorly, and so that was just what they were used to thinking, and we didn't
okay.
know. All these years later, we're still not sure how much was which.
Okay.
Um, and so there was a decent amount of overlap because the problem with going through trauma that young is it affects how your brain is wired quite literally. So
Yes.
it's really hard to differentiate the two.
And then you and your siblings, of course, experienced secondary trauma. That is a thing.
Mhm. Oh,
And
absolutely, it is.
you were saying that you and your parents, no one had support to
Mhm.
get through that secondary trauma. What would you have liked to have seen your family experience in the way of support back then?
Back then, initially, it would have just been helpful to have somebody give us some practical tips on how to ease their adjustment into our home and how to help mitigate that culture shock,
Yeah.
how to learn to communicate. They didn't know much English, so some tools on how to help bridge that language gap would have been helpful. Moving through the years, once they started to display some behavior problems, it was pretty frequently dismissed as, they're just boys, or
Mm,
that's normal, or oh, that's just culture shock. And nobody took the time to look deeper
okay.
and figure out that something this consistent and this explosive probably has a deeper underlying cause.
Mm,
There was not any support on how to help with trauma recovery because not every kid who's adopted or goes into foster care has been through something traumatic. But a lot of them have, and there
correct.
were no
Yeah.
resources offered with here's how to help a kid get through trauma and heal,
Hmm.
for my adopted brothers or for us biological kids. And that is something that I would have very much appreciated.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, Maybe something more more respite care might have been helpful. That
Mm,
wasn't an option given where we lived. Like I said, my dad was military, so we were stationed some places that just didn't have many resources around.
yeah.
And because they were adopted and a permanent part of our family, there were even less resources than there would have been if they were in foster care.
Okay.
And I have no idea how many resources are available in foster care. I keep hearing from you that it's not actually all that many, or
Well,
it
and
can be
it
hard to
probably,
navigate and find.
yes, and it also probably varies by region. Um,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
like what kind of nonprofits do we have in the area? What kind of family support do we have? What kind of united team do we have within the foster care um, unit, the foster care system that we're a part of? Now, as far as trauma goes, in
Hmm.
my experience, we have fostered 31 children, and we have
Oh.
adopted two. The
Hmm.
children that we adopted were from foster care. We did not get into foster care to adopt. However, that was what God had planned for us. And both of our children we've had since the hospital. So one of them was 3 days old and the other one was 4 months. And she was straight from NICU. And they even have trauma because we believe specifically that trauma comes even from utero.
Oh,
If there's
absolutely.
drug use and if there's no prenatal care, domestic violence, they experience that trauma within. And so we see like some dysregulated behavior in our children and stuff such as that, which we know is trauma. And then that's amazing. And so where can everyone find you?
So it is pretty simple. It's glasssibling.com.
Super simple. I love it. It says
Absolutely.
what it is. And I love that I learned what a glass sibling is. Thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you for giving me the space, and thank you for helping share the stories of everybody on all sides of the foster care thing.
Yes, because it doesn't always end in adoption, but we're so grateful
No,
when it does and it works out, right? But whether it looks like it's working or it doesn't look like it's working, God can use all of it, just like he did with your story,
amen.
just like he is with our story. And I'm so excited for what's to come in your future, helping those people out there. And our goal is to help people within the foster community, whether they're foster parents or not, they're adopting, they're just interested, to be educated and to feel supported and encouraged. And it sounds like those are your goals as well. You want to educate people
Absolutely.
on the trauma, and you want to help support and encourage them and teach them coping skills and alleviate some of the heartache that they could experience without learning your techniques. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely right. Well, thank you for doing what you're doing too. It takes all kinds of people to build a support network,
It does. We're
and
a
there's never
village.
just one side.
Yes.
Amen. Takes a village.
Thank you for choosing to be here with us today.
For more, you can visit us at our website or find us on social media.